Ready, guys? Welcome back to Left Us Straight Podcast. It's time for another special correspondent. We have David Reddish back, our special entertainment correspondent. So lucky to have David back. He did this for quite a few months for us back pre-pandemic. David is an amazing freelance editor and writer, and he's going to be coming back at least twice a month here for us to kind of share great entertainment inside news that he's got. If you missed our first episode, check the link down below. We talked all about the great upcoming movie Queer that is possibly now playing in Toronto or Venice film festivals. Be sure to look for that. David, welcome back, my friend. How are we doing?
Thank you, Scott. I am doing beautifully. I'm so excited to talk about this topic. People have been asking me about it for years, literally. So I think everyone's going to enjoy this. This is going to be fun.
I'm looking forward to getting into it. I mean, we had a couple hot topics last time you were on. I mean, X-Men 97 and Bo's story. That's we're still getting things on that. We'll do follow up to that as they come to fruition all together. But wow, that's kind of a barn burster. And Queer looks like it's getting some good reception at the film festival. So that's exciting.
Yes, indeed. And on the subject of queer and films, I think we should talk about some queer films. What do you think?
I'm all about it, my friend. What do you got for me?
So we were inspired. The website IndieWire recently released a new reader poll ranking the best movies of the century, the 21st century. Steven Spielberg's AI surprisingly came in at the #1 spot, which I would not have expected. I have many thoughts on AI. I didn't care for it much when it premiered. I saw it again about 10 years ago and was very impressed. And I saw a completely different film, and I think it actually was way ahead of its time and is kind of a sci-fi masterpiece. But I thought, because people have asked about this many times, one of my former employers wanted me to do this as a long feature, but wanted something really fast and cheap. And I said, if you're going to do this, you got to take it seriously. The best queer films of the century. Best queer films of the century.
That is a lot to unpack right there. And it's subjective in so many ways, but there's also ways you really can quantify. And I think you're so good at breaking down films in general. So I'm excited to see what you have. Why don't you maybe give us your top 5?
Okay, well, top 5. So first of all, I have to add a couple caveats here. I did not include any documentaries, which there have been obviously incredible queer documentaries that have come out in the past few years. The work of David Friends, How to Survive a Plague, and the Life of Marsha P. Johnson. Disclosure, my friend Sam Fetter's film about trans representation on screen. 5B, an incredible movie about the AIDS crisis. There's so much out there. And so I encourage everybody, go check out the queer documentaries. That could be a whole other segment. We may have to do that sometime. The best queer documentaries of the century. I also did not include movies that I have not seen. The #1 movie I have not seen that I'm sure a lot of people would think might be on this list or very close to the top is a movie called Portrait of a Lady on Fire. It's a very lesbianic drama story, which everyone says is incredible. It did very well on the festival circuit, did not get major distribution, it did not become a mainstream hit, and unfortunately didn't get any awards where the Oscars are concerned. I believe it was nominated for Independent Spirit Awards, but did not find a mainstream audience. That's not necessarily a prerequisite for this, but it is not a movie I have seen, so therefore I do not feel qualified to really discuss it.
Gotcha.
Other movies, there's a long list of honorable mention. I have notes here. A long list of honorable mention movies. Love, Simon, Boy Erased, Carol, The Broken Hearts Club, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, Call Me by Your Name, Transamerica, I Love You, Philip Morris, Pariah, Kinsey, The Runaways, Angels in America, which is a mini-series, but if we're counting that, it should be in the top 5 best queer films of the century. A Fantastic Woman, another wonderful film. Esteros, Milk, the Harvey Milk biopic. These are all amazing movies. However, I did not rank them in the top 5. My choice for #5 is one of the big movies that signaled the wonderful flood of queer content, queer films that we would be getting subsequent to its release. A little movie called Brokeback Mountain. 2005.
I've heard of it. Yeah, I think I've heard of that one.
Directed by Ang Lee, starring Jake Gyllenhaal, Heath Ledger, Michelle Williams, Anne Hathaway, and Randy Quaid. a spectacular queer romance based on Annie Proulx's novella about two gay shepherd cowboys in love. It's interesting to me now, the people that clearly were not self-aware when the film came out, or who were maybe too young to remember, it was a big gay deal that two teenage heartthrobs, Jake Gyllenhaal and Heath Ledger, and two up-and-coming starlets, Anne Hathaway and Michelle Williams, were doing a movie about gay cowboys. Ang Lee was already a legendary director. This is the man that did Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, for goodness sakes, Hulk, Lust, Caution. Amazing director. The fact that they were doing a movie about gay cowboys sounded like a joke. That the movie was as moving and beautiful and popular. Emphasis on the popularity. Straight people were flocking to see a movie about two gay cowboys in love.
Right.
That was a radical success for the LGBT community where representation is concerned. I know sometimes now people get angry because Ang Lee is not gay. He directed the film. Larry McMurtry, who wrote the screenplay, was heterosexual. And obviously Jake Gyllenhaal and Heath Ledger, who play the gay cowboys, they're not gay either. But you know what? They made a great movie. And that is the important thing. And by the way, in 2005, there were no gay movie stars big enough that could possibly get this movie bankrolled, that could possibly get it made, that could possibly get enough butts, gay butts or straight butts or anything in between, in seats. It was a huge deal that these guys were doing this. At that time, it's strange to talk about because it's only really 20 years ago. But playing a gay character could still damage a career, especially for a straight man who was trying to be a leading man.
And I think that started the conversation of should gay actors play gay roles. It wasn't really thought of a lot before then until everyone started trying to make this controversy that wasn't there after this movie. I think it was it was the start of a downhill slope or an uphill slope that I wasn't very happy with. But it doesn't matter if you can make that good of a film. If you can write that well for gay characters, good on you, man, right?
Absolutely. This is a movie that changed the zeitgeist. It moved the cultural needle at a time when the marriage equality conversation was really starting to come up and was really moving to the fore. I mean, remember, the year prior, 2004, George W. Bush was re-elected president, according to historians, largely because he tried to ban same-sex marriage using a constitutional amendment. That failed. But it got people who were gay panicked and psycho-Christian and homophobic to go to the polls to vote for him. And the country has suffered ever since. If only they had listened to the gays in 2004, there would have been no disaster of Iraq, war on terror, Hurricane Katrina, the subprime mortgage crisis. All the crap that we've had to deal with since could have been prevented, and we would be looking at a much rosier state of affairs today.
I had just moved to Ohio then.
Okay.
And that's what started flipping Ohio from blue to purple to red was that gay marriage, because they put that on the ballot, the initiative on the ballot, and it passed in Ohio for no gay marriage, no gay nothing. So I had just moved here not too long before that, and they used that wedge issue, and it was effective.
They did. I mean, we could have a whole conversation. Maybe closer to election time, you and I will talk queer politics and the evolution of it from 2004 to 2024, 20 years of LGBT issues at the forefront of the American conversation.
I love that.
But I think Brokeback Mountain is still a terrific film. It's still beautiful. It's still moving, still heartbreaking, magnificently acted. And I think the criticism of the movie that because Jake Gyllenhaal and Heath Ledger have never had sex with men, as far as we don't know who they've been hooking up with, because they both identify as straight. Somehow that discredits the movie or it discounts it. I think it's a stupid conversation. It's a really stupid conversation for many reasons we could go into now. This will probably be a subject that we return to as we are talking about these other films. But I named Brokeback Mountain number 5 on my list.
If you can get past that one scene where he drapes the one shirt over the other, written by a
Yeah.
straight man, directed by a straight man, and keep your gay shit together, I'm pretty impressed because that scene broke me on my Brokeback Mountain. Wow.
Absolutely, 100%. It's a magnificent film. Still very controversial that it did not win the Best Picture Academy Award. It lost to a film
Right.
called Crash that year. There's talk as to whether or not gay panic and homophobia played a role in that. That's another conversation for another time as well. We could have that one closer to Oscar Day, I think. That would be interesting to talk about. But
There you
so
go.
moving on, number 4 on my list is a movie called Mulholland Drive, directed by David Lynch. Came out in 2001, stars Naomi Watts, Justin Theroux, Laura Elena Herring, Ann Miller, the late MGM musical star. She's in it. It's a fascinating movie. Also came in at number 3 on IndieWire's poll of the best movies of all time. And in, I
Interesting.
think it was it Empire? Was it Cinema Blend did another poll recently where it came in at number 2. So
Wow. Okay.
this is a movie. It is one of the great movies. I'm of two minds on it because it is a queer film, but it's also kind of an unintentionally queer film. I don't think that's
Yes.
what they were setting out to make when they started it. It's what the movie became, and it certainly embraces that proudly. And I think it's a beautiful thing. So it's a very hard movie to talk about because it is a mystery about a woman who comes to Los Angeles to follow her dreams of being a movie star. And she encounters a woman who is suffering from amnesia, who's hiding in her apartment, and who has $120,000 in cash in her purse. And so much of the movie is about these two women, Betty and Gilda. Gilda? No, that's not her name. She sees a poster for Gilda and calls herself Rita from Rita Hayworth. It's about Betty and Rita trying to solve the mystery as to who is Rita really? Why does she have this money? What is going on? And how does this tie in with a movie that is being produced by a director played by Justin Theroux? And there's murder involved. There is organized crime involved. There's a lot of just general weird creepiness involved. And over the course of the story, these two women fall in love with one another. Now, I don't want to spoil the major twist, but let's just say the movie takes a very erotic and very dark turn about halfway through, and it becomes a very, very different take on these characters and a very, very different take on this story. Mulholland Drive is so interesting to me because we call it a mystery in that it's a mystery genre. It's about these characters trying to solve a mystery. But as an object, as a movie itself, it is a mystery, a puzzle to be solved. And I don't know that I could ever come up with another movie that really works that way, where not only are the characters trying to solve a puzzle, the movie is actually a puzzle to be solved by the viewer. It has a circular narrative where you could start the movie halfway through and the plot is somehow exactly the same. It's a circle. Like it is actually a circle. If you join the two ends of the movie, it just kind of keeps flowing into itself. It's fascinating that way. Magnificently acted, particularly by Naomi Watts. This was her big breakout at a time when she was ready to leave Hollywood. Nicole Kidman had been paying her rent because she was completely broke. And she got this movie and, of course, became a major, major star because of it. Now, 2 Academy Award nominations to her name, one of the biggest stars in the world, has had a great career. Mulholland Drive is a completely unique cinematic experience, one that embraces its queerness through pure logic. It's not about saying, hey, we're here, we're queer, get used to it. It's about saying people fall in love. People make love.
Story driven, very story driven.
It doesn't matter who you thought the character was. It doesn't matter what the character thought about himself or herself. It matters that this is what the character wants in the course of this story. And it's a very, very beautiful thing. Mulholland Drive, in my mind, does not, in part because the production history, it was not really began as a queer film. It began as a TV series that then sort of evolved into a film when no network would produce it. Mulholland Drive doesn't really get credit as a queer film that I think it really does deserve, because it's just so matter of fact, which is something that I think queer filmmakers and queer audience members, we just want characters to be matter of factly LGBTQ, where it doesn't need to be the story of their coming out, of their transition, of their tragic love affair. It's just a story about queer characters inhabiting the world. And Mulholland Drive revels in that. And I think it's an absolutely wonderful movie. It's something everybody should check out, if for no other reason but to just go, what the hell did I watch? What was that?
I think that's a great choice, and I'm happy to see it in all these different lists that you mentioned there. But when you look back, I remember the marketing. You weren't expecting a queer film out of the
No.
marketing. They really didn't market. They did the mystery part. They kind of built all that.
Yeah.
But until I sat through it, I had no idea the subtext, or it actually wasn't even subtext by the end of the
No,
movie.
it's
But
text.
it's like, yeah, it wasn't billed that way whatsoever. So it
No.
was very interesting to see that it's still that beloved and wasn't a gotcha movie or anything like that. It was just a well-made movie.
It's a fabulous film, one everyone should check out. My grandparents wandered into a theater one Saturday afternoon to check out a matinee of Mulholland Drive. Hearing them talk about it is still hilarious, where they did not know, because of all the reasons you've just cited, they didn't know it was a queer film. They didn't know that it was sort of a puzzle film. They had no idea what to expect. They just knew it was getting great reviews, and they were like, what was that? What just happened? It's a unique experience. And so if you go into it with that mindset of you're going to see something completely unique, I think anyone could really enjoy it. So,
Well
okay,
played.
number
I
three
like
on
that. Good choice.
Number 3 on my list is a little film, emphasis on little. This is true indie filmmaking. It's a film called Tangerine, and it's by the director Sean Baker. Sean Baker is famous for doing completely no-budget movies that he will shoot and edit, shoot on an iPhone, edit on his home computer. He's famous for using non-actors or untested actors in the case of Tangerine, and just telling stories. Most recently, he did a film called Red Rocket that was also very, very well received, a hysterically funny movie. He also did a film called The Florida Project, very, very well received. But I think Tangerine is still his best movie. It is about 2 trans women living in Los Angeles who are sex workers, and it's just sort of a slice of life. One is getting out of prison, and she's trying to track down her boyfriend, who also happens to be her pimp, who is now dating another woman. And of course, she's really angry because this is a cisgender woman that he is dating, not a trans woman, and so she feels very, very slighted. The movie is absolutely hilarious. It is so, so funny. It's so gritty and so real. I mean, anybody who knows Los Angeles will recognize all the locations where they shot and just how inhabited. This is a movie that feels inhabited by these people. It doesn't feel like you're watching characters in a story. It's almost like a documentary, like you're just watching people walk down the street. And that owes a lot to the performances in the film. The standout, in my mind, is by a trans woman named Maya Taylor. She plays one of the 2 leads. She's gone on to have a very successful acting career. She's a real actress. She's very charismatic and absolutely hilarious. The thing that blew my mind about Tangerine is it is so funny through most of the story, and then it pulls the rug out, and it's just so moving. It is an absolute knife in your heart, the last 5 or 10 minutes of the movie, where you see how these 2 women function and how they support one another, even when they're angry with one another, like the true friendship that they have for each other. I think it's just such a beautiful queer story of companionship and the strength of the community and the kinds of bonds that we form with one another. I particularly appreciate it on the level of, this movie came out in, was it 2017, 2018? And with very little fanfare. But this was a forerunner, the idea of we're casting trans people as trans characters. We're going to find trans actors that can actually carry this movie and do what's asked of them, which has become the trend since, of course. It's a movie that's about darker elements of the queer community, people in our community that still have to resort to sex work, that still live in poverty, that still get harassed. This happens to trans people and cis people alike. But it's a powerful, powerful story, one that is equal parts hilarious and equal parts moving, in my view.
Another great choice. I looked it up. It came out in 2015.
Oh,
It's one of those movies that I kind of go back to my restaurant days, where it's like you come for the sizzle and stay for the steak, because it was all about the iPhone. I mean, that was the big selling point. This was all done on this really low budget on an iPhone. One of the first movies of its kind done that way. But it was just a really well-made, great movie with a great story. So Absolutely. I think I I think that's a great choice. Like I said, I think it was more hype than what the movie was about. I think when it first came out, in my memory at least, I think it was
Yeah,
for how it was made rather than what the film was. And I
I,
think I agree 100% that
I
the
think it's true.
performances and how it kind of turns at the end there, so well said.
I think so. I think that's true. Everyone should definitely check it out. That's going to be like the broken record refrain of this segment. We're just going to keep saying, "Everybody go check it out." Well, definitely go check it out. Coming in at number 2, the only movie on this list to actually win the Best Picture Academy Award, a little film called Moonlight, which I absolutely adore. One of Barry Jenkins' films. And it tells a story of a young black queer man. We're not exactly sure how he looks at himself or how he labels himself, but you know what? That's not what is important. What's important is how he
Exactly.
feels and how he behaves. We see him at 3 different segments of his life. One where he's growing up with a drug addicted mother in Miami, and where his mother's drug dealer sort of adopts him as a surrogate child. The second period where he's an adolescent and he undergoes his sexual awakening, where he and his best friend uh, begin to have feelings for one another and have sexual exploration together, and it's implied are falling in love with each other. And then a third segment where he is an adult and he's still absolutely in love with his best friend, and so he decides to drive across the country and or at least he drives from Miami to somewhere in Georgia, I think Atlanta, now that I think about it, to track the man down. And I don't want to spoil how the movie ends, but I think it's another beautiful story.
Mm,
Obviously, very, very well acted. Mashira Ali won an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor and
fantastic.
became a major star coming out of the film. The rest of the cast, they've all done well for themselves. Why can't I think? It's Jareel Jerome, who plays Chiron when he's young. He's gone on to be a major star. Naomi Harris already was a star. She got her first
Exactly.
Oscar nomination out of it. Fabulous actress. It's a terrific movie. And the thing that I don't hear anyone else talking about. There's a lot of talk about, it's a beautiful story of 2 men in love. It's a beautiful queer African American story, and that's something that's a subject that is still sort of underrepresented where queers
Right.
are concerned. I think both of those things are true, but the thing about it that really stands out in my mind, the thing that makes me identify with it so much, the second act of the film is very much my own sexual awakening, or it mirrors that in many ways. Where I don't know what your experience was, Scott, or what our listeners' experience was. I did not, as a queer adolescent or guy in my early teens, seek out boys because I had a crush on guys and I knew I was gay and I wanted to have gay sex or I wanted to experiment gaily. I, my sexual awakening was I was with someone who had been a childhood friend, and we never talked about what we were doing, but we both knew, okay, we're alone and this is what we're doing. There was something very instinctive
Right.
about what we were doing. There was something very natural about it, and we were just being ourselves, and we were touching each other in a way that we craved being touched, and that it somehow, once we got through our own sort of shame around it, it somehow felt very natural and very right. And that is something that translates to this film. Chiron's sexual awakening in the second act is so natural, and it's very, again, matter of fact. There's that term again of
Right.
much like Mulholland Drive. It just feels like a natural extension of this character and of his story, and I think that makes it so much more powerful for viewers.
And I think everyone can equate to that either on their first awakenings early on with a good friend or when they actually have been dating maybe a woman or whatever, and all of a sudden they find that connection with the right guy that kind of flips that switch where then you do start to feel those feelings, right? And it's a whole different experience. So well said. I like that.
Yes, it's another movie everyone should check out because I think it's not just one of the best queer films of the century, it's one of the best queer films, period. And I think even if we were doing a full list of every queer movie ever made and we were throwing in documentaries, we were throwing in, silent films or queer coded films, another conversation we could have another time, I think Moonlight would still be in the top 10, probably the
Agreed.
top 5. I think it's absolutely magnificent. Uh,
Agreed.
So in the number 1 slot, do you want to wager, Scott, by the way? Do you want to
What's
wager
that?
what I picked? Do you want to speculate? Any guesses as to what I'm going to pick?
No, I don't
All
have
right.
a guess.
All right. I'm wondering if our listeners are sort of chomping at the bit for this one. I picked a movie called Hedwig and the Angry Inch. I
Oh
think
my goodness.
that is
Okay.
the best queer film of this century. Obviously, directed by John
Wow.
Cameron Mitchell, based on the musical, the off-Broadway musical of the same name, which has since become a Broadway musical. John Cameron Mitchell also plays the lead. I'm sure most of our listeners are familiar with this, so I don't need to give a full rundown. But in short, it's about a little gay boy living in East Berlin during the Cold War who undergoes a sex reassignment surgery that is botched. He then becomes she, immigrates to the United States, dealing with mutilated genitals, not having male genitals or female genitals, as the case may be,
Right.
and does the only logical thing, which is becomes a rock star, a really famous trans queer rock star. I picked Hedwig, first of all, because I think the quality of the music's incredible. This is a true
Yes.
rock and roll musical. So many musicals, and as a connoisseur of theater, it always drives me nuts. We hear about these rock musicals. Phantom of the Opera is a rock musical. Les Mis is a rock musical, and I'm like, yeah, but
Right.
are they? They kind of are musicals with a little bit of a rock infusion, but they're not rock and roll music. They're not, screaming your voice out, wailing, dark,
Right.
they're very melodic and sort of maybe show tunes. Traditional show tunes are like pop with a rock edge, stuff that
Very
you will
true.
hear on adult light rock radio, coming up next, the music of the night,
Right.
Sarah Brightman, and then Vanessa Williams. Sort of goes on with that. Hedwig is all about rock and roll. It's all about what rock and roll means, how it means being a rebel, how it means smashing icons. And in this case, it's smashing icons and tropes of sexuality and gender. And part of the reason I named it number one on this list is because, in my mind, it is maybe the most complete exploration of gender and sexuality that I've seen in this century. Hedwig is kind of trans, not really, but sort of. Hedwig is kind of gay, sort of, but not really. It's like none of these labels or these terms really apply. Hedwig is Hedwig, which is something that, particularly our younger generations have really come to embrace, that concept that I'm just me and I'm going to do and present how I want, and call me what you want. I don't care. Hedwig is a character. Hedwig goes by she and sometimes by he, but does not get hung up on her pronouns, his pronouns.
Right.
Just Hedwig is Hedwig. And call me what you want. It doesn't care how I view myself. It doesn't care, I don't care. It doesn't change what I have to say. It doesn't change how I feel. And I think that is sort of the essence of queerness. And Hedwig, the film came out in 2001, but in a crazy way, it predicted the entire conversation that we were going to have for the next 25 years, basically, about where queer people fit in society, how we fit in popular culture, how gender and sexuality play into the way we're looked at and the way we look at ourselves. It's a beautiful, beautiful story of self-realization. It has some incredible music. One of the great, and I can't say it enough, one of the great performances in the history of all musical cinema by John Cameron Mitchell. Absolutely incredible performance, Oscar-worthy performance. Years ago, I actually did an essay on the greatest performances in the history of musical movies. John Cameron Mitchell was absolutely on there, supported by my editors, supported by my fellow writers. Everybody said, you're absolutely right. It is one of the great performances in cinema. It is a movie that I think straight people will love, that I think queer people will love,
Right.
that young people will love, that old people will love. It has something that everyone can relate to. The character of Hedwig is someone that is because Hedwig is so unique, it's somehow everyone can relate to Hedwig on at least one level. And it's also a
Right.
wildly funny movie, very moving, beautiful, sad story, love stories, about loving and losing. And it's about America and the East and West, all these different ideas. And it is one of the most complete stories I think I've ever seen on that level.
That's such a great review, and I like how you say that it really does touch on the conversation we've been having the last 25 years, very much so.
Yeah.
I think it did foreshadow a lot of it. I think it was one of the first Broadway shows that started bringing outside star power to it
Yeah.
with like Neil Patrick Harris. And I mean, now the stunt casting, they maybe call it
Yeah.
now for Broadway shows, but it was one where queer individuals, everything, they wanted to play this role. It was such an amazing role that John Cameron Mitchell put together. And I remember everyone going through it on Broadway, and it was just an amazing show. And like you said, the original, the best. John Cameron Mitchell, amazing. Deserved all the accolades. But wow, yeah, good choice. I did not expect that, but very good choice.
Thank you. I think, top 5, everybody, if you're listening, go check them out. You will not regret it. And if you've already seen them, these are the kinds of movies you can revisit and still have a great time. Obviously we could go through a lot of honorable mentions here. We have a very, 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 very long list, but I think.
Well, I think we have a lot of topics for upcoming shows. I think we touched on a lot of different things that we can do on there. I am going to put you on the spot for a second.
Okay.
Let's go the other way. Give me the top most overrated LGBTQ films. You don't have to do the whole century, but let's do since 2020.
Since 2020?
2000, I'm sorry.
Since 2000. Oh,
2000.
my goodness. I mean, that narrows the film, the film field a bit. Obviously, there were some attempts at queer films that didn't go over so hot. The film Stonewall, which was, I think, meant to be kind of a gay historical drama, did not work. It was mostly ahistorical. It was definitely not well received. Although, that was not a movie that was well received when it came out. It was ignored by the queer community and the straight community. Nobody wanted to see that damn movie. So I don't know. Could we call it overrated? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I mean, overrated. Gosh, I would really, really have to think on this. None of the honorable mention movies that I said earlier, I don't think their acclaim is undeserved. I know some people say Call Me By Your Name is very overrated. I know some people say The Broken Hearts Club is overrated, or Love, Simon. I don't think any of that's really true. I think certainly in a historical context, those movies are all very, very important. Call Me By Your Name obviously made an incredible star out of Timothée Chalamet, who gave the performance of the year in that. Exactly. It is a stunning performance. The Broken Hearts Club was a huge deal because it just portrayed the queer community as being a community, and no one was really doing that at that time. It was all sort of coming out narratives and AIDS narratives. Right. Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, is there one that springs to mind for you at this point? Well, there's an easy one, but I'd have to dissect it more. But I think for all the star power, I think Bros got a lot of negative reaction, and I think that's kind of definitely, I wouldn't call it overrated. It was just a bad LGBTQ movie. It was overhyped.
Yeah, overhyped.
Is what it was. And I think you're absolutely right on with that. And we can do a whole segment on this and how I think it was mismarketed, how I think Billy Eichner, who wrote and starred in the film, whether or not you think he's funny or a good writer, he's not the best actor. He's not very charismatic, certainly not enough to carry a film, to carry a movie, which is part of the problem. I don't want to dwell on this again, but the whole, Bros made a big deal about we're casting an all queer cast. We're only casting queer actors as queer characters. And it's like, well, that's a lovely thought, but you have to make sure that these people can carry the movie, that they can actually have the charisma to be compelling enough to make an audience want to watch. And in the case of Bros, that simply was not true. So, it's unfortunate. That also came out
in the overrated, but I think it was it was problematic in all the ways you just listed very much. I mean, I love Guy Branum. I think he's probably one of the smartest, funniest thinking men on the planet. And it'd be interesting I'd love to have his take being in it and everything as well. Because if he could analyze it any better, but it's very interesting.
I mean, there have been other movies. The thing is, the overhyped or overrated movies, most of them go forgotten. At a certain
Yeah,
point, we just
true.
we don't remember them, and I think that's just telling unto itself. I don't need to list them, but there was the movie with Kate Winslet as a lesbian archaeologist.
Oh, yeah. I don't remember the
Starts
name of
with an
that.
A. I can't think of what it's called right now. That had a lot of awards buzz, and it was
Right.
fine. It wasn't bad. It was okay.
Well, if you go old school, I mean, Harry Hamlin's Making Love was just such a. I thought that was overrated.
I mean,
I mean, it was
I
groundbreaking in a
disagree
lot
with
of
you on
ways.
that point.
Really,
I
I thought
think
I could say groundbreaking. I don't know. I
yes.
don't know if it's not overrated though.
I mean, it was definitely groundbreaking. And I think in the context of its time, it was underrated. I think people sort of dismissed it as, oh, it's
Hmm.
just it's like a movie of the week. It's a soapy kind of, oh, it's a coming out story. But everyone kind
Right.
of forgets there were no stories like that. Point one, at the time, nobody was doing a story like that.
That's true.
To have two heartthrob actors, Harry Hamlin and Michael Keane, playing the leads, that was a big deal. It was very well acted by both of them, as well as Kate Jackson, who plays the female
Kate
lead
Jackson, I thought was amazing in it. Yeah.
in the movie. And it's also, looking at it now, there's something just refreshing about it because it's not about AIDS. And this is a movie that came
True.
out in 1982. It was
Right.
just, it was an epic queer romance that was done by a major Hollywood studio, by Fox, that in my mind is groundbreaking and makes it important enough. That is it overrated? It's not what would be made today, certainly, but
Yeah. I
in the
guess that's a
context of
good way
that
to look
moment,
at it.
I think I don't think it was overrated. The one that gets me in trouble, and this is not from this century, but the one that I always maintain is hideously overrated, is a movie called The Boys in the Band,
Oh, see,
which of course,
I never disliked Jim Parsons till I saw the remake of it. It's like I remember I didn't remember seeing the original. I know I saw it
yeah.
forever ago, but I saw the remake with Parsons and all of them in it, and it just got me more angry than anything else that I was not real happy with the story at all.
I mean, there are many different. We could do a whole segment on this, but obviously there are many different schools of thought when it comes to the Boys in the Band, which started as a play, of course, and then became a true indie movie in the '70s, and then was redone by Netflix a few years ago with an all queer cast and a queer director and writer in Mark Crowley. It's interesting to me because I will agree with you that I think the remake is flawed, but it there is a certain humanity to it that the original movie, which was directed by William Friedkin, brilliant director who made The Exorcist and The French Connection, the original movie doesn't have that. The original movie feels very much, in my mind, it is looking through the keyhole at the asylum at the lunatics when they're playing, when the doctors and the orderlies are gone. There's something clinical about it, and there's something um, pathological isn't the right word, condescending isn't really the right word either, but there's this sense that we're looking at ill people, that these are sick people, and while we can,
Yeah, I
I
could
think
see
we can
that.
just
Right.
dissect and discuss the certain, the certain personality woes or complexes that they have. They're certainly flawed people, but I don't think that they're inherently sick. It feels to me when I look at the original movie like it's regarding gay people as sick somehow,
Yeah.
and I don't feel that way about the community now. I don't know that that's what William Friedkin or Mark Crowley, who was gay, Mark was gay, I don't think that's what
Right.
either of them intended. Friedkin, obviously had many queer people that he knew and was close with, including Mark Crowley, and directed another movie called Cruising, equally controversial for its depiction of
Definitely.
LGBT
Yeah.
people. But the original movie just, it feels very self-loathing, and it feels very dark and hopeless. The thing that I like about the new version, that Mark Crowley, who wrote the play, wrote the original movie, he came back and he wrote the remake just before his death. Actually, he died before the movie was released,
Right.
but he did live to see it completed. The thing that was very important to him to add to that script, and I talked to Joe. I can't think of his last name. Joe Mantello, who directed it. we talked about this. It was very important to Mart to add hope to the story, that these people may be problematic. They may have personal issues in their lives. They may have toxic relationships, but that does not make them sick people. And there is hope for them. There is hope for the community beyond these characters that we're watching.
Right.
That made me like the remake a lot more than I liked the original. And that probably speaks to my own upbringing and my own coming out. And, I'm a product of my generation and of the queer rights movement time. But I think it's a much less offensive portrait. And I know there are people that say the opposite, that the original is much less offensive than the new version. That the original is more warts and all, that the original is better acted, it's better directed. I'm willing to go to the mat and have that wrestling match. If you're listening, folks, feel free. We can have you on the show. We can go toe for toe on this. We'll oil each other up. It'll be beautiful. We can have a wrestling match over the boys in the band. But
I love that. Well, as we've said on every episode, last episode and this episode, and we'll talk about every time, if you want to challenge our opinions or if you want to add context to them, feel free to write at Left of Straight. You go to the Left of Straight podcast website. You can reach out to David on Instagram. What's your handle again on Instagram, my friend?
The Gay Magneto, all one word.
Very good. And of course, we have David's fantastic books. If you haven't caught up and read those, be sure to check Amazon for David Reddish's books. Author 4 times over, and possibly an upcoming graphic novel I'm very excited about.
Yes, the first issue was done. We're still in negotiations to find a publisher for it. But I look forward to discussing that more with everybody when we have something set in stone.
Fantastic. David Reddish, thanks for being our special entertainment correspondent right here on Left of Straight Podcast. You'll find David twice a month here on Left of Straight Podcast. Let us know what you think. If there's any movies you want to explore, or any topic you want to explore, go ahead and send us an email or a DM, and we'll see what we can do about it. Thanks, David.
Thank you, Scott. Always a pleasure.
Have a great week, everyone. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Entertainment Exposed with our special entertainment correspondent, David Reddish. Join us twice a month for fun insights, reviews, Hollywood gossip, and inside information. See you next time.